everyone, this is Kyla with my first video for freelance models and the photographers that work with them. And this is a video about how to be a professional model. And this is a video about how to behave professionally and how to display professionalism, and not so much how to make money or how to be super successful. This is about how you're going to act as a professional model. Quite quickly, I do want to discuss, because I have not done the intro video yet, that a freelance model is a model that books her own photo shoots. And this is probably going to pertain to anyone that is not with an agency. And that's not to say that these tips won't work for agency models, but I'm a freelance model, and so most of my advice is going to come from that sort of field of view. And I have talked to several other models and photographers, so this just isn't just my opinion, but it's actually kind of knowledge that I've acquired over the 6 years I've been modeling. So I'm going to discuss some main points, which are communication, being prepared, and acting professionally. And then I have a few smaller points that I'm going to discuss at the end. So the first point I want to discuss is communication. I can do a whole video on communication because there are very many aspects to it, and I feel that communication is so important. But I'm going to try to hit some small points, and then if you guys would like a video specifically on communication and how to communicate with each other, and this can be for models and photographers, please comment and I will do that. So for this video, I'm going to start with prior to the shoot. Prior to the shoot, you're probably going to be private messaging with a photographer or emailing back and forth. You'll be like, oh, hey, I'd like to shoot with you. And then maybe they're going to say, oh, yes, I'd like to shoot with you. And then you get that, well, what do you want to shoot question, and you have to figure all that out, because that always takes forever if you don't have anything specific figured out. But make sure that when you are speaking to someone that you're treating them respectfully, and that you're taking the time to respond in full sentences and not in text speak. And probably cut back on the massive number of LOLs and smiley faces. I'm not saying you can't have any. I still use smiley faces because sometimes we need that to show, or at least I need that to show that I mean this in a slightly joking way or something like that. But mostly let's keep it professional. So you're talking to them, you get the shoot booked, and you're going to want to ask them a few questions about it. Ask them, what do you need to bring? Especially if you're a newer model and you're not sure. And I actually still do this when I book shoots and I'm not quite sure what we're going to need. I'll ask, I'll be like, well, hey, I have these things. Which of these things would you like me to bring? And I try not to offer more than I can pack in my suitcase. But other questions you might ask are, where's the shoot going to take place? So you have an idea. If you're going to have to change outfits and you're going to be in a more public place, you're going to want to find a place to do that. You're going to be doing that in the car. Do you need to bring a robe to put on over? Things like that. Also, I like to exchange my phone number with the photographer after I book the shoot. Sometimes before, but usually it's when I book the shoot with the photographer. I'll be like, hey, here's my phone number, and I can take phone calls anytime between this time and that time, but I prefer texting because I don't hear very well. And so in my case, texting is much better for me because oftentimes I misunderstand what people say on the phone. But then the photographer hopefully gives me their phone number. And this is helpful in communication later on because sometimes maybe you need help finding parking. Maybe you can't find the location even though you had the directions and you're just not seeing it. I actually had this happen once, that the directions were just totally wrong. And I don't know what happened with the maps, but it was just wrong. So I had to contact the photographer. He's like, oh yeah, this happens, just go this way. Maybe you need to let them know that you're stuck in traffic. Maybe the photographer gets to the location, it's a public location, and they need to let you know, oh hey, they're doing some outdoor festival here, let's switch it to this location. Things like that. It's good to have that phone number. I also recommend that if you're talking to a photographer on one form of communication, say Model Mayhem, that you also get a second form of communication. And usually what I choose is an email address because that's something that a lot of people get on their phone and they check frequently. Facebook's a good backup, but if you're already talking to them on Facebook, the email is a good secondary choice for that. I know a lot of people check their Facebook quite often. So the way you communicate is important, but also you need ways to communicate with people. So that's where the phone number and the email address comes in. Also, you're going to kind of practice communicating during the shoot if you're not particularly good at it. It does take time to build that confidence to ask questions or to say, I'm not really feeling this. So when you're doing the shoot, ask about the lighting. Most of the time, photographers, unless they're shooting natural light, will be shooting with at least 2 lights. So ask, oh, by the way, can you tell me which one the main light is? Or you can also say, which direction should I be facing more? Because sometimes it can be hard to tell when you're just looking at the lights. Because sometimes the bigger light isn't necessarily the main light. Because sometimes that's a fill light. I don't want to get too much into lighting discussion, but ask questions and ask what the inspiration is. If you get to the shoot and maybe you kind of came up with a concept, but ask for what sort of emotion they want or what type of facial expressions. I do this a lot because for me, there's a difference between like the art nude classical stuff and maybe like the more like eye contact, cute or sexy stuff, and then the like darker, more experimental stuff. So ask. Sometimes just knowing that will kind of inspire you, and that's a good way to communicate because then they can also sort of get into that with their work and you're collaborating. So that's always nice if you're on the same page. So that's all I'm going to talk about for communication. So now I'm going to move on to being prepared. And we already talked about asking about the address and the location, and one of the main things about that is, and this seems minor until it happens to you, and then you're like, oh wait, I probably should have figured that out. That is parking. Because sometimes at some locations, parking is a little more complicated than it is at other locations. Just ask what it is, make sure you bring the coins or the cash if you need them, and make sure you plan the walking time if you're gonna need to walk a little bit to the location. So that covers that. Also, make sure you do your homework. And by doing your homework, I mean things like studying poses. Before I do a shoot, every single time before I do a shoot, and I've done this forever since I've been modeling, I will go online or flip through my old photos and study poses. Now, there's several models that I love their work and I love to study their poses, and sometimes if I'm trying something new, I'll spend even more time studying because even though I'm experienced and I've been doing this a while, it helps to see those subtle differences with the hand placement or where the eyes are going and things like that you may not quite realize you need to research a bit before you start shooting. And some things are going to come more naturally to you than others. You can also practice your facial expressions in the mirror. That's always a good thing to do. Just spend a little time doing your homework before the shoot. And ask the photographer if you're not sure. It's okay to ask them, oh, hey, do you have any like inspirational photos that are maybe kind of close to what we're trying to get or have the same feeling? Again, that goes back to that communication because all these things kind of build on each other. And the next thing I would say is to pack ahead. One of the things I started doing a little while ago, probably later than I should have, is packing the night before the shoot or further before. This means you don't have to worry about waking up in the morning and scrambling to pack everything. Everything's ready to go and you can spend your time on other things that you need to be doing. So maybe make a packing list of the things you need to bring and go ahead and have that ready to go. I'd also have what people call a modeling kit. And if you're on any kind of forums or anything like that, you can do a search for modeling kit and people will tell you what's in there. There's things like safety pins, a basic makeup kit, feminine care products, pain reliever if you need that, the things that you're using for your outfit, if it's something specific for your outfit, things like that. Also, basic underwear in nude and black is always good to have with you if you're doing any kind of clothing or fashion. So, next thing is, night before the shoot, do not stay up late and do not drink heavily. Because if you do not get enough rest, or if you drink a lot, even if you think you hold it well, it can often show, especially around your eyes. And even if you put concealer on, that tends to just look cakey and may actually accentuate the fact that you kind of have those circles. And then also the whites of your eyes can show that. So just treat your body well the day before the shoot, or preferably if you're gonna model, treat your body well in general. Also make sure that you drink water and have something to eat before the shoot. I know it may seem a little odd because we all want to look like slim and thin before our shoot, but you need the energy to pose. I can tell you that holding poses, that takes, it takes energy. It takes muscle energy to hold that pose. Even me just like doing this. If I do that for several minutes, I start to feel that, and I know that I'm going to be sore the next day if I hold a pose for a long amount of time. And when I was a newer model, I went to a shoot and I hadn't had breakfast that morning. It was an early morning shoot. It was a nude shoot. I was concerned about how I was going to look in the shoot. And I got there and started posing and actually started to feel faint because I had not eaten. I was so embarrassed because the photographer could tell we had to stop the shoot so I could eat something. And thank goodness the photographer was understanding. But even though I'd never had issues with weakness before, didn't have any health problems that would mean that I need to eat, and I thought I knew my body, I still needed to eat something that morning, and I should have. And I've learned my lesson since then. So make sure you eat something. And bring some small, light snacks too if you think you're going to be shooting for more than a couple hours. That's always a good thing to have, along with a bottle of water. So, also, make sure that if you're going to be late, that you're prepared with that phone number so you can call the photographer and be like, hey, traffic's really bad, I'm going to be about 5 minutes late. Things like that. That's why you have that phone number. Okay, so my third major topic is going to be acting like a professional. So during the shoot, my main 3 don'ts are don't flirt, don't whine, and don't gossip. Flirting leads to miscommunication and leads to you thinking the photographer's being creepy and the photographer thinking that you're flirting with him and he's just returning it. Also, gossiping makes you look like you're a gossip and you're going to talk about the people that you're shooting with later, and they're not going to like that. And nobody likes a whiner. If something's uncomfortable, it's okay to speak up and say, oh, hey, this isn't comfortable, or to joke around about, oh, this is a really awkward pose, or I'm going to feel this tomorrow. Okay, that's fine. But actual whining like, why do we have to do this pose? I can't even imagine saying that during a shoot, but I have heard other models say that. Don't do stuff like that. Be friendly and realize that the photographer may be talking to you even about slightly personal, and I don't mean intimately personal questions. I mean like, oh, where did you grow up? Or, oh, you know, how's your husband or your boyfriend doing? Things like that. They may be doing that to get you to relax. It's probably them trying to connect with you and trying to help the photos, because the more relaxed you are, the better the photos are going to be. It's okay to have conversations with a photographer during the shoot. You don't have to be silent. And then also, if for some reason you do need to say no, it does happen, you can do this. Just say, oh, no, I don't really like this pose. Can we try something else? Or I'm not really comfortable with that. Can we move on to a different type of pose? Every time I've had to do that, out of the 3 times in hundreds of shoots that I've done, the photographer has apologized and we have moved on, and it was never an issue after that. I am going to add a few safety tips at the end of this video, since I think a lot of newer models might be watching this, but I'm not going to cover that stuff right at this second. And then the next thing is, and this is relevant now, you have to act professionally online as well. If you use your Facebook profile for modeling relations and you post your modeling photos there, you talk to photographers there, you have photographers and models on your friends list, you're going to have to keep that profile professional. If you don't want to do that, don't use that profile for that. So if you go on there and you seem like you're a ranting crazy person, people remember that. And you can say, oh, well, they shouldn't hold my Facebook profile against me all day long. But the thing about it is, they're going to. And they may not even realize they're doing it. But we all act based on what we see from someone. If I see a photographer on Facebook and he's saying all kinds of crazy stuff about female models, like, all the female models I know are just terrible divas, I'm gonna be like, I don't know, should I work with this guy? Is he gonna say ugly stuff about me? Or my favorite, least favorite thing is people who tag another person and put that person on blast. Like, a photographer makes a post and says, I had a shoot booked with Sally Model and she totally flaked on me. Okay, so Sally Model, should not be flaking on people. We get that. And it's horrible, but making a Facebook post about it and ranting about it is not going to help the situation, and it makes that photographer look like he's part of the problem, even though he's the one that got flaked on. I'm sorry, but that's the way it works. The same goes in groups and things like that. When you're in a group, be respectful. You don't have to argue with people. Debating is fine. When it turns into an argument, that's when people are going to start going, oh, I don't know. Because if you can agree to disagree, there's still a chance you can work with someone. There are photographers that I agree to disagree with all the time. They may not be aware of it. Same with other models. One really good example is I'm a nude model. I do a lot of artistic nude work. Sometimes I'll go in a forum and I'll see a model or be in a discussion and I'll be like, oh, I love nude modeling and I think it's, it's a great way to express my artistic side. I love the form and the figure. And then I get some other model who's like, oh, I hate art nudes. It's just so distasteful and I would never do that. I can almost guarantee you that photographers are going to see that, and even if they don't want to shoot nudes with her, they may not work with her because she just seems like a diva. Now, perhaps a better way for her to say that is, oh, I don't feel that art nudes are for me, but I can respect the people that do them. Just like I can say, porn's not really for me, but that's not to say that I look down on or think the people that do shoot it are horrible. Same goes for other styles. I'm not a fashion model. I mean, I've done a little bit of fashion work, but I'm not a runway fashion model because I'm 4'10", which makes me a full foot too short for that. So I know that that's not good for me, but I'm not going to slam the models that do fashion work because they enjoy that. And who am I to say it's not fun or whatever? It's just not for me. That's cool. And sometimes it's worth considering just not responding. And I know that's hard because sometimes, for me especially, I like to give people advice, clearly as I am making this video. But sometimes I just have to be like, you know what? They're not going to listen to what I have to say, and me arguing with them about it isn't really going to help. So sometimes you just have to be like, I'm not going to comment on this post today. I'm going to spend my time contacting photographers I want to work with, or going in a different group that seems more productive. Something like that. So, now that's the end of my main points, but I also want to talk about some smaller points that I think are also important. And one of them is canceling a shoot. It happens to all of us that something comes up that's very important and it's an emergency and we have to cancel a shoot. It does happen. It's not fun. It is disappointing, but it does happen. And if it does happen, the best way to handle it is to contact your photographer or your model if you're the photographer and let them know, hey, I'm not going to be able to do the shoot. And do this as soon as you know you can't do the shoot. Because then either they can find someone else who can do the shoot, or maybe you can reschedule, but at least they're not going to show up at the place that you're shooting and then be waiting for you. Because that's flaking. When you are a no-call, no-show or flake, that is the quickest way, I think, to ruin your reputation. Because no one wants to risk working with someone who they're going to put a ton of effort into and then that person just isn't going to show up. So do not flake. Cancel as soon as you know you need to. The next thing is, if your appearance changes significantly, let the photographer know. Ideally, you don't want to change your appearance after you've booked a shoot. But depending on the type of work you're doing, it may happen. For example, my appearance has been pretty much the same since I started, but I know some girls who dye their hair different colors or who maybe get a piercing or a tattoo or something like that. Let the photographer know that. Be like, oh, hey, I know all my photos show me that I have pink hair, but I just dyed my hair blue. Preferably you should do this, actually you should do this before you book the shoot. If there's a change from the images in your portfolio that currently represent you, you need to let them know before they book you, even if they seem okay with it. So if all my portfolio pictures show me with my dark hair and all of a sudden I decided to go red, I need to go ahead and tell any photographer who's booking with me, oh, hey, by the way, I know that I have dark hair in all my photos, but I took a couple, even selfies. I know people hate selfies, but in cases like this, it's okay. Just be like, hey, here's a couple selfies I took to show my new hair color. I'm not using those as modeling photos. I'm using those as photos to be like, hey, here's what I look like right now, like a Polaroid that an agency would use. So let them know if your appearance changes. That's important. And it's also respectful, and photographers appreciate that. And then finally, my notes on safety. I'm not going to do my full rundown of safety tips, but I do want to cover a few of them because I know there are going to be some new models watching this video, and I feel it's important. And I also feel that knowing safety makes you a more confident model and helps you to recognize who's serious about working with you and who maybe has ulterior motives. So the first thing is pre-shoot communication. If someone comes off as a little creepy, or they're just throwing off red flags, even if you can't nail down what it is, if you're not comfortable working with that person, there is no reason for you to shoot with that person, even if everyone else says they are phenomenal, because you're not going to be comfortable during the shoot, and then your photos probably aren't going to look that great. Also, ask for references. Find a couple models in your area that are more experienced, and just go to them when you're working with a new photographer that you don't know about. Be like, hey, do you know of this photographer? And most of those models, if they don't know or they haven't shot with him, they can send you to someone who has. And my preference for references is I prefer to talk to someone who has worked with that photographer within the last year. That way I'm getting firsthand experience and no secondhand he said, she said stuff. But then also it's fairly recent experience because people change. We all know that people do change. So that's what I prefer there. I'll also make sure that during my shoot, if I'm at a shoot alone, maybe I have someone who I've texted the address to so they know where I'm at, and maybe I text them once an hour or so while I'm shooting, go, hey, stuff's going good. It's a good way to make you feel better, and it's also a good way to stay safe just in case. And then finally, we already talked about how to say no nicely, but if for some reason that saying no nicely does not work, you can leave a shoot. And if you feel that your safety is threatened, you need to pick up your purse and your phone, if you can get to them, and walk out of the shoot. It's better to do that and risk not getting photos and risk not getting paid than to actually put your safety at risk. I have never had to do that. I can't think of a model off the top of my head who I know who has had to do that, but I'm telling you that if you feel like that's what you need to do, you should do it. There's no reason to get in a screaming match. There's no reason to argue. There's no reason to escalate the situation. Just get yourself and leave. I hate to be serious about that, but I do feel that safety is important. But that's never happened to me. I've done hundreds of shoots. I've worked with hundreds of photographers. It's never happened to me. I've had to say no thank you a couple times, but nothing beyond that. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful for you. I do hope that you'll share it with the new models that you know if you did find it helpful, but that also you'll like the video and that you'll subscribe to this new channel of mine so that you can see more of these videos. And if you'd like, you're welcome to suggest video topics you'd like to see me cover. I'll also link my website with my articles similar to this video, but they're written out in the description box as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm sure I'll be making more of these soon. Bye!